Alien Base Dog may seem like it's a covert operation from some sort of sci-fi futuristic movie, but it's not. It's bassist extraordinaire Jeff Jones, and he has agreed to be the guest on my podcast today.
Reluctantly.
Today's podcast brought to you by the Clayton Bellamy Foundation. ClaytonBellamyFoundation.org, supporting education and community-based programs in the province of Alberta by providing financial support to arts programs in need and by advocating the benefits and importance of arts education. ClaytonBellamyFoundation.org.
Reluctantly.
Thank you, Terry. Yes, I am glad to be here.
It's awesome to have you. I've always said that Jeff Jones, Jonesy, is probably in the top 3 of the nicest guys I have ever met in the rock and roll business.
Well, don't let that get out. I'll be taken advantage of.
Well, it's very likely. And you know what they say, nice guys always finish last, but we're near finished with the amount of work that you're still doing and how vibrant you still are in the Canadian and international rock and roll music scene. It's great to see, and every time we get a chance to visit, it's always great to catch up. It seems like it's always very chaotic when we get together, especially when you're with Tom Cochran, because Tom thoughts come in and out, and all of a sudden we're all involved in 7 different ways to sideways with the conversation.
Yes,
That's why I was looking forward to our chat today, because it's just going to be you and me for however long we are, and it's just going to be focused on some really important stuff, I think.
Oh, well, I'm just glad to be connecting with you again.
The first thing I want to ask is the records framed on your wall behind you. Can you just do a kind of a clockwise thing? And I'm just curious what they're for. Start with the top left, the silver one.
Top left is a platinum commemoration of Red Ryder As Far As Siam.
Okay.
Containing the track Lunatic Fringe, of course.
Right.
Next to it is Gowan, You Can Call Me Larry, which is a record that I didn't actually record on. I'm not sure, maybe one track, but I recorded some tracks subsequent. And the reason why I have that record is because I did a lot of the touring in support of that record.
Right.
Because at that point in time in 1994, my good friend Peter Fredette, who was playing with Larry Gowan at the time, rejoined Kim Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
And Larry called me and said, "Do you want to do the tours?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Okay, I don't have to make any more calls. Let's go."
And of course, Larry's now doing so much with Styx.
Yeah. So I was with Larry from this point in 94-ish to 98 when he left and then started to play with Styx.
Top right there, the gold one on the top right.
That is Breaking Curfew, Red Ryder, 1984. Maybe the least successful of our records. But hey, we did it.
And I think it was right around then where I first met you, and Tom for that matter, 1984, after the Breaking Curfew. Okay, lower left, the gold one on the lower left there.
Our lower left, that is Neruda, 1983, Red Ryder, which was the most critically acclaimed of all of our Red Ryder records and took us a lot of places. We managed to get on a lot of tours in the U.S., supporting so many bands, Pat Benatar, the Kinks, Starship, REO Speedwagon, the Beach Boys, on and on.
And then the other two on the bottom there?
Well, the middle bottom is the gold for As Far As Siam again.
Uh-huh.
And the far side is Don't Fight It, the first Red Ryder album, which actually included the song White Hot.
Now, when you're talking about some of the touring that you did, the critically acclaimed record and the touring that you were running around doing, Pat Benatar and so on, you mentioned the Kinks. How significant was it for you as a musician to be out on tour with a band like the Kinks, considering how much of an influence they had back in the Kinks 60s
Yeah.
days when they were a huge, because I've heard that it may not, obviously the Beatles were in there, but the Kinks were one of those bands that really influenced you back in the day when you were first starting to pick up an instrument.
Oh, for sure. Everyone learned how to play You Really Got Me, and All Day and All Night. Like those were staples of every young high schooler garage band when I came up. And man, to see them daily and to see how Ray Davies could interact with his audience, the song that was really the showstopper for them in that day was Lola. And if you consider the subject matter of that, it's so advanced, really. He was touching on something that no one really talked about, but everybody knew there were trans figures in the world. Man, the way that the humor with which he addressed that subject, and the song was really the showstopper of their set night after night. Amazing.
So it was Ray and Dave Davies, brothers back in the day, and you think about brothers that have been in rock and roll bands.
Yeah.
So the Davies brothers, the Knopflers, the
Yeah.
Chris Robinson and his brother and the Black Crows and stuff.
Yeah.
When you were touring with Red Ryder and touring with the Kinks, was there already kind of a thing there that you could notice, or were you oblivious to it like most of us?
Oh no, we knew, we knew they were brothers, and that Ray was the chief songwriter, and he was married to Chrissy Hind at the time, and Tom and I had an experience of meeting Chrissy Hind in the elevator of Madison Square Garden before a show, and it was she was classic and hilarious. She just looked at us and she looked around. She goes, "Oh yeah, the garden, just like I pictured it." And it was just so. It was Chrissy Hind, and we were just like, "Oh my God, she's wonderful." The brothers were okay, but Dave didn't really get on with the drummer, who was, I believe, at that point an original Kink member, and they would throw stuff at each other at the end of sets and then get nasty. And we'd go, wow, that's really crazy. Like, I know we sometimes have words, but I'm not throwing cymbals. Oh, they were chasing each other around and whatnot. And the one anecdote, I'm just going to give you one that sort of stands out to me. Tom may have had the same one. We played in Boston, and Lunatic Fringe was big right at that moment. And for some reason, someone told us, well, you should, because the song is known in the market, you should just come out and play that song first. And we did. And it was a standing ovation. And it was a standing ovation at the end of the set. And the next day at soundcheck, Ray Davies sat on that stage at soundcheck and fiddled around for an hour and a half until our soundcheck time was used up. It was a statement.
Yeah. Well,
You're not getting a soundcheck after that.
Headliner doesn't want to be upstaged by the opening act.
Yeah, but I mean, how are we, with our one fresh song, going to upstage someone with a legacy like that? Grace Slick, when we played with Starship, this is why she was so important, and what a generous personality she was. First thing she did was held a meeting before the tour started and said, "Look, I know that you guys have a song." She goes, "I love that song, but I'm not worried about you upstaging me because I have 10 songs that big." So she goes, "I want to see everything on this blankety blankety blank board light up. I want to see every light on that stage on full. You're not going to be restricted in any way, because it's better for all of us if we're all loud and proud." and it's better for our audience, and it's better for our bands. And she left it at that. She just said, you play loud, and I'm giving you all the power.
Did that not also happen recently in one of your gigs? Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I think Tom told me this when I was talking with Tom Cochran on the podcast. Steely Dan was unable to open for the Eagles. You guys got called in to play in Toronto, and the Eagles were very gracious with the full nut when you guys played there to open for the Eagles. Is that not correct?
I believe they were, but that one actually, embarrassingly, I got all the information secondhand, Terry. We got the call the night before to play, to fill in for Steely Dan, and of course said yes. And on the morning of the show, I fell ill with the worst food poisoning you can possibly imagine and was unable to attend. And John Diamond, the legendary Canadian bassist, subbed in for me.
Wow.
Because he was in the area and actually had charts from having subbed for me once.
I was not aware that you had missed that. I didn't know that you had food poisoning and missed that.
Yeah. And there's my food poisoning came from I did a session with Jimmy Boskill. Are you familiar with Jimmy Boskill? No?
No, go ahead and refresh.
Well, he plays occasionally with Blue Rodeo, occasionally with the Sheepdogs.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He was a mandolin and fiddle and all instrument champion of Canada when he was like 12. Fantastic multi-instrumentalist and now producer. And we did some recording at his studio in rural Ontario. And I had something from a local restaurant the day before that took until the morning of the Eagle show to hit me.
Oh man,
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine what a disappointment that would have been.
It was the worst feeling you can imagine. Not just the sickness, but the fact that I'm letting my brothers down, and that someone had to come in under such adverse circumstance. And we had actually, this is how crazy it was. I got up in the morning, and our guitar tech, who incidentally his name is Terry as well.
Yeah.
He came to my apartment and picked up my basses and gear so that at sound check that stuff would already be there. So when he came, I went down to his car, I put the stuff in the car. I'm feeling fine. They said, hey man, this is crazy. Okay, thanks for grabbing the stuff. I'll see you at 4:00. And this is about 10 a.m. I went back upstairs and I never left the bathroom for 24. I know. I've missed a few things, Terry. I got to tell you, I'm grateful. I'm very fortunate, and I play with so many talented and lovely individuals, but I didn't attend the last waltz with Ronnie Hawkins.
Oh, wow. That would have been.
I was invited, and I didn't have the airfare. Ronnie told me, I can put you up on a couch down there somewhere, but you got to get your own flight. And I was playing with him in his band at the time. It was 1975 was that 76? I can't believe I didn't go.
Wow. But no toilet involved for the Ronnie, just the airfare, right?
Yeah. It was strictly, I didn't have that kind of money. Yeah.
So the day of the Eagles show, your toilet took it to the limit.
Yeah.
I guess. Oh my goodness! What one of the things I was just popped into my head as we were going in the clockwise circle of all of the records that are on your wall behind you. I was going to ask you, when is the last time that you were shopping in a mall, grocery store, or driving around or whatever, and there were other people around, and you heard something that you played on, like in a public place?
Oh, it happens. It happens from time to time, for sure. It does happen. Yeah.
So when you're in a grocery store and all of a sudden Life is a Highway comes on, or Lunatic Fringe, or White Hot, or something like that, something from the Gowan, or even The Ocean, like, do you
Yeah.
ever look around and say, I wonder if these people know that that's me laying down the rhythm?
No, I don't. I know that they don't, because it's not, my face is not on the cover. Actually, on the Ocean album, my face was on the cover, but no, they don't recognize me, and that's okay. I mean, I did have a really great experience in a little used record store in Regina last summer, uh, with my buddy Tim Povacante from Burton Cummings band, and he's a vinyl uh, junkie, and he shops in all these little places. And we went into this place. He goes, yeah, you got to go in here. The guy's a really nice guy. And last time I saw one of your records in here. And so I went in, and there were a couple of Ocean records in there and a couple of Red Ryder records. And I was looking at the Ocean record, and then the proprietor comes over and he goes, oh, you like that? And I go, yeah. And Bover goes, yeah, look at the back cover. That's him. Right? And so I ended up buying a few records for $1 and having a picture with the owner of the shop, and it was fun.
Ocean, just in case somebody's listening or watching right now and they hear the word Ocean, that was the name of your first band that you were in that had incredible success, and you joined when you were 16, 17 years old?
Yeah, I was 16. My 17th birthday was the record was released, and we played a concert opening for Delaney and Bonnie and Friends with Dave Mason on guitar, subbing in for Eric Clapton.
What was Eric Clapton not there because he was on the toilet or something?
Yeah,
Did he have food poisoning?
I don't know why Eric Clapton wasn't there, but we were like, oh my God, that's Dave Mason. Who cares that Eric Clapton's not here?
It's funny because in the days leading up to our conversation that's happening right now, obviously traveling back in time, and really, when it comes right down to it, you are a walking, living encyclopedia of rock in Canada. And we referred to Ocean. There's been a number of references to it now. And if people aren't aware, if they will certainly be aware of, put your hand in the hand of the
Okay,
man.
hold on 1 second. 1 second.
Okay. I've lost Jeff. Right, there you go. Now look at that. I thought you'd gone to the bathroom.
No, this was in another part of the apartment. So it was the gold record for Put Your Hand in the Hand.
And you were one of the 3 singers on that record at the age of 16.
Yes. I couldn't believe that they were all like 24, 25 at the time, everyone else involved. I couldn't believe that I was in a band with people that had experience. They were already playing and doing other things. And I was like, wow.
I've had that song stuck in my head for 4 days now, by the way. It's one of those songs that just gets stuck in your head.
I'm going to send you, as soon as we're done here, my recent re-jigging, re-recording of that song.
Are you doing it with Jones and Finn?
Yes, I did it with Jerry Finn.
Okay.
And we did it we completed it just before everything shut down for the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
And I'm very proud of a version. It's clearly the same song, but a different take on it. And
Right.
Jerry does some incredible work on the dobro in this song. And but nothing has ever really materially happened with it. A few people know that it's out there. You can probably find it on Spotify or whatever.
Right. Well, same with, you also have the solo track from earlier this year, Velvet Sky.
Yes.
So look for that on Spotify if you want to add something nifty from Jeff Jones to your Spotify playlist.
Reluctantly.
This podcast brought to you by The Terry Evans Show with Pete Potipko from 5 till 9 Monday through Friday on Edmonton's Classic Rock, K97. If you are in the Edmonton market, listen at 97.3 on your FM dial. Otherwise, listen live at k97.ca.
Reluctantly.
With the Put Your Hand in the Hand, the history of that song, the story of the song is remarkable in some of the right ways, but also remarkable in some of the wrong ways. I mean,
Right.
it was,
Yeah.
did it go to number one, like North America wide? Or, I mean, it was a huge hit.
Well, Canada-wide, yes, number one. And in parts of overseas, it was huge in Japan. It was huge in Germany and Italy, places that we visited. But in the U.S., where we also played quite a bit, it never got to number one on Billboard. It was stuck at number two for a number of weeks for a song that I am not particularly fond of for a number of reasons. Three Dog Night, Joy to the World.
Oh,
Which, it just doesn't really speak to me the way that it had the kind of, I was only 17, but Jeremiah was a bullfrog, like Jeremiah was I'm not 5. Um, you know, you're putting out a song and you're singing to me like I'm 5. I want these grown men to sing a real song. But
well, and that was a Hoyt Axton song, was it not?
actually, that was a Hoyt Axton song.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think he was just kind of joking around. But the song stayed at for something like 6 weeks at number one on Billboard, and we never could crack number one as a result of
Damn
that
you,
song.
Three Dog Night.
And then we'd be driving around in our Ford LTD station wagon, looking like the Griswold mobile, driving around doing shows, and that darn Joy to the World would come on, and
Ocean, the members of Ocean, you guys didn't write Put Your Hand in the Hand. That was a song that was basically supplied by the record company or some such thing, correct?
Well, it's a bit of a story. It was written by Gene McClellan, who was a Nova Scotia songwriter. God rest his soul, a beautiful man. And he wrote Snowbird, which was Anne Murray's first hit that got her career going. He also wrote Put Your Hand in the Hand, which she had recorded. And her record label didn't see that as a single for her. And our record label said, hey, listen to this song, learn it. We're going to record it, and we're going to throw this out just to see if anything happened.
And something did. Now, and I don't know if I know the story correctly or if I'm wrong, but was Anne Murray a little miffed about this with her record company and maybe with others?
Yes, she was a little miffed that she missed that, and she thought, gee, I've only had one hit, and now I'm looking for a second hit, and these guys have it. And Gene McClellan also was a little miffed. I think we changed one or two words in the song that it sang more easily. And boy, he was very unhappy about that. But then once it started getting to be top 10, he felt a lot better. The next time I saw him, he was much more happy to see me.
Yeah.
And then she had other hits subsequently, and she got over it too. Everyone
Yeah, and did okay for herself over the course of the next few years.
Yeah.
I just think it's funny that you're 16 years old and pissing off Anne Murray. The thing is that her version compared to the Ocean version back in the day, Ocean, your version was a little more bell bottom, and Anne's was a little more button up top kind of thing. It was
I would think so. I mean, that was basically being done by the the CBC from Nova Scotia or whatever, the kind of production and studio musicians playing it a little more straight laced. We were not that, and we had more of a vocal arrangement to it as opposed to one person singing it. There were three of us basically singing it. And we were so enamored of the band of Levon Helm, Robbie Robertson, and that group. We were enamored of that. And so it came through in our rendition. It had,
with multiple lead singers to
yeah, yeah. And the all acoustic instruments. The only electric instrument on that recording was my bass.
and
Everything else.
for people who are still listening and just wondering again, the thing, oh, I need to rewind to figure out what that song is. Put Your Hand in the Hand by Ocean. You watch, it's going to get a little spike on Spotify.
It will be there.
Wouldn't that be something? After that, after all of that happened, and I know that Ocean went on, and there were a few years, and it kind of dwindled, and then you guys called it quits. Did you ever have an opportunity to meet Anne Murray or talk to Anne Murray? And was there ever any discussion? Did she?
Not much discussion. A couple of times briefly, but we didn't really go into it because by that time she was like a huge star. But I did actually in 1988 for Christmas, I was hired as a background singer in a choir on the Anne Murray Christmas special that year. And the choir featured all these deadly singers like Molly Johnson, Tabora Johnson, Wayne St. John, Carlos Morgan, all of these people that were that I looked up to as singers, and we were this choir. We were doing a rehearsal, and I did get a chance to talk to her briefly, and she by 1988 she was like, "Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, you were a kid in that band. Yeah. Man, I was pissed at first, but look at me now. She was very cool. But what I did remember about that rehearsal day and recording day was how sharp her ear was for singing, and she could pick out a group of people. I think this section, somebody's singing a little flat. I think this section, you need to pick up the meter a little bit. You're dragging. She knew exactly what she was talking about, and she could tell you what it was, and she didn't do it in a mean way. She just knew it, and she would explain it to you and say, "Please pick this up." And we moved on, and man, it was one of the best experiences of my life.
I can't stress enough how important it is for anybody who might be listening or somebody who might have a child who's listening right now, the importance of being able to sing backup.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe you're going to be the lead singer of your band, but if you're the bass player, if the keyboard player, the drum player, it's important to sing backup, and it's important to bring that aspect to any band. And it's played well for you over the years because you've always had that aspect, right?
Yeah. It's always been an important part for me. I guess because of it, I've rarely been the lead singer, but that's starting to change a little bit now. 50 years in, it's like, let's go. But I did have the one record in 2001, an album that had 10 tracks, one of which got radio play. Anyway, all of that is neither here nor there. The thing about vocalizing in a group setting is that everyone benefits. And whether you're the background singer or the lead singer, if you have a group of people that can cover different parts, that know enough about music theory to grab the right harmony at the right time, it just embellishes everything so well, makes it so much easier to make songs work. A lot of the gigs that I've gotten, that's been the difference. Like when I played in Infidels with Molly Johnson, which was the only band that I had a Juno with. There was another bass player who's a really good friend of mine, Dean Jarvis. who is with Nelly Furtado for many years, Alessia Cara. He is a fantastic musician, and he was a fantastic musician in 1991. But when it came down to a decision, I sang. Simple.
Yeah. And you know what? You brought up somebody else earlier in our conversation that stands out head and shoulders among a lot of people, and that is Kim Mitchell's bass player, Peter Fredette, who
Yeah.
I'll never forget Kim Mitchell after Pete singing, what is it, All We Are? Or
Yeah.
Yeah. And Kim says, geez, Pete, I wish you would learn how to sing because, I mean, Peter Fredette just belts it out. He's unbelievable when it comes to backing up Kim Mitchell.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you. You born in Chicago, grew up, lived there until you were 12 years old, and your dad gets some gigs in Toronto. And then all of a sudden, you become a bass player. Now, I'm sure it wasn't instantaneous like that, but and whether it's the influence of the Kinks or the Beatles or Elvis or however people describe their influences, how did you gravitate toward the bass? Most people say, oh yeah, my parents got me a little K guitar from out of the catalog, and then I went to town. But you've been a bass player the whole time. I'm sure you can play guitar, but how did you go straight to bass?
Well, friend of my parents gave me a baritone uke at some point, and as opposed to playing it like a uke and strumming chords on it, because it had the lower resonant frequencies, I started picking out the bass notes on some of the popular songs I was listening to. And so that was before I came to Toronto. I probably 10, 11 years old. But then when I got here, I talked my mom into getting me a $70 Winston bass out of a music store. Then I just really began to embrace it, and I played acoustic guitar too, and I played flute up until that point, and a little bit in ocean, but the bass became the thing.
Did you ever have aspirations of a Jethro Tull style band?
No, I never became that. I was still just reading, and I could play a few classical pieces and that kind of thing from sheet music. I was not really able to improvise or play by ear like I can with guitar or bass.
Can you still play the flute? Like if somebody threw you a flute, could you rattle off something?
Not really. No. I not really. I picked up a couple of times, and I think I did a couple of times during the years with Gowan. There were a couple of little parts in there, and it was not. It's something that you really have to. It's not as easy to maintain the embouchure, which is how your mouth is positioned and how. That's how you get a tone on one of those. And boy, if you don't continue doing it, it's hard to leave it for 20 or 30 years and then pick it up. It just sounds like,
There's just a lot of spit coming out of the end of it. And
yeah,
that's not nearly as sexy as somebody doing, this to the bass, right?
Right.
So born in Chicago, lived there basically until you're 12 years old. And one of the things that I kind of noticed over the course of your lifetime is, well, first of all, the big thing is your father was in the music industry, and the exposure you had to some pretty big names as a young kid. Mary Wells, Curtis Mayfield, The Impressions, Oscar Peterson, and that sort of thing. I mean, it's no wonder that you ended up in the music industry, right?
Yeah, it was around me. My dad was friends with a lot of these people, worked with a lot of these people. Oscar Peterson used to come to our house in Chicago for dinner occasionally when he would be on his way somewhere. And his bassist at the time was a legend named Ray Brown. And somewhere I in a box somewhere in a basement or a storage unit is a photograph of 5-year-old me sitting on Ray Brown's knee. And I never thought at that time that I would ever be a bass player. And he is one of the greatest bass players of all time. But God, I loved him. He was a great character. But my dad never really he was just under that tier, just under where Oscar Peterson was, and he would sit with guys like Errol Garner, who was also a great jazz pianist, and they would say, yeah, well, I'm working on this, and I do that, and I play this song, and it's really complex, and I'm working on this kind of a chord structure, but man, none of us ain't never going to be Oscar. They all knew.
Yeah, it's funny how you can how those talents shine, and it just elevates. I mean, well, we even talked about it with Anne Murray prior.
Yes.
Songbird, and then being pissed off about Put Your Hand in the Hand. Well, it wasn't a roadblock. It wasn't a wall for her.
No.
She went around it or over top of it and just kept on that trajectory.
Yeah, she was going to be on that trajectory anyway. Yeah. But one of the things that my dad gave me that this might have supported the whatever idea I had in the back of my head of being in the show business was he took me to the Schubert Theater in Chicago to see the original production in probably 1959 of The Sound of Music.
Oh, before it was a movie.
So it was before it was a movie.
Yeah.
It was the original Broadway production had moved to Chicago. And I got to go and see it front row center as a 5 or 6 year old kid. It was fantastic, mind blowing. And then my dad, my mom said, "Hey, listen, there's a chance to go back, and if you want to see it again, only not from a seat. They've said that you could stand in the wings during the production and observe the show if you'll just be quiet in the wings." And I was like, sure, that'd be interesting, right? So I go, and it's like a kind of a hot day, and I'm standing there, and the scene comes where the Ave Maria, right? And 1,000 nuns, there's probably 30 in the production to fill the scene. They're all in the wings with me kind of out of sight there. And a lot of them are not happy. It's hot. They're in nuns' habits. They're smoking cigarettes. They're swearing at each other. "Get off my foot, you beep, 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 beep. What are you doing? Beep, beep, beep. Stand on my beep, beep foot." And I'm just standing there going, holy smoke. They're not actually nuns. They had me fooled. I thought they were nuns. And they were not. They were actors, and they were very good actors.
So you saw the show from front row, and then you saw behind the scenes, and that's more than likely contributed to your show business bug.
Yeah, I think I was sullied by that point. Yes.
So up until 12 years old in Chicago, right?
Yes.
So old enough to have memories, like that one,
Yes.
and others, musical experiences, life experiences, that sort of thing. Then your father gets gigs, like I mentioned earlier, in Toronto, and away you go. You guys are off to Toronto, and then things really opened up for you. We talked about Ocean at the age of 16 and Put Your Hand in the Hand, and then that kind of fallen apart. That's the thing that, is heartbreaking about the music industry, and you find that out at a young age, where you have a number one song or a top 5 song or a song on the top 40 or whatever, and you don't get rich, and it's hard to do it again, isn't it? A lot of times other people get rich.
Basically, after the point where the song became really successful, the rights to that music and to our subsequent one album were sold to Neil Bogart, who's a figure in American recording history that, I think he originally signed Donna Summer and Kiss and people like that. But he took over the rights to this record, and between him and some of the people that owned the rights to the music in Canada, there was some dirty dealing that went on. I don't know exactly what. We weren't privy. We tried to sue, and then we found out that the lawyer that we had hired to sue all of these record industry types was actually their lawyer.
Oh,
So that was, and he failed to
disclose
acknowledge.
that to you?
Yes.
Yeah, you don't have to be Matlock to figure out that that's crooked dealing.
Yeah. So we went home with nothing, and we could not get arrested afterward. And even though we were writing and recording and demoing and getting songs from publishers that were, a couple of which were quite good, and no one would touch that name with a 10-foot pole.
Reluctantly.
The Edmonton Oilers Community Foundation is a proud supporter of oil country and has been contributing to our community's success since 2001, with a focus on programs aimed at those most vulnerable in our community and youth hockey programming as well. You can find out more about the Edmonton Oilers Community Foundation by going to nhl.com/Oilers/EOCF.
Reluctantly.
When I talk about you being a walking, living history of Canadian rock, it's like the family circus dots of that little kid going around the playground,
Right.
You seem to have gone around the dots of the entire country, or the music, the rock and roll country, as it were. Now, from Ocean, did you go to Ronnie Hawkins, or did you go to the band with Too Loud McLeod?
I went first to Ronnie. So, and Ronnie, and I'm going to, in front of this, I'm going to tell you that I've written a song with Jerry Finn and with Ken Friesen, who is our producer, Tom's sound man, the sound man for Canada's Got Talent, for the Junos, for the Grey Cup, my producer, the best. We've written a few songs, and our most recent endeavor is a song called Big Time, and it's a story of my time with Ronnie Hawkins in his band, which was a year 75 through 76.
Ronnie Hawkins, the Hawks, the band
Yes.
were the Hawks. Ronnie Hawkins' band was Levon Helm and
Yeah.
Robbie Robertson and that sort of stuff. So it's funny how that little dots, there's little offshoots that connect you here and there. It's like a family tree that touches everything. And,
Yes. I mean, when I was still in Ocean, before I was in Ocean and when I was in Ocean, I used to go see Ronnie Hawkins, and he used to play at a place called the Nickelodeon, which was upstairs of a place called the Friars Tavern. It's now a Shoppers Drug Mart.
Where you can probably hear a song that you've played on on the overhead speakers.
Exactly. But it was a hard rock cafe for a number of years too, right at Yonge and Dundas Square.
Uh-huh.
But this building had such a legacy of music on 3 floors. And in my instance, I would go to see Ronnie play on the top floor in a pub called the Nickelodeon. And Ocean would play in the main floor, which was just called the Friars. And it had a bigger stage and more nice seating. In the basement was a piano bar called the Drawing Room. And guess who played down there frequently?
Your dad?
My dad. So a lot of times I would be playing on the main floor, and we would all talk and try to manage our set times so that, well, let's run upstairs and see Ronnie. And then Ronnie go, well, I want to go down the basement and see your pops, right? It was crazy. We were running up and down the stairs in this place, and in between sets, you're catching other music. Phenomenal.
What a great show. And being able to see your dad perform like that, I think would have been
Yeah.
phenomenal.
It
True.
was really, really great. Yeah.
So Ronnie Hawkins, a little time with Brian McLeod, Too Loud McLeod, and then he went to Chilliwack, and then they had Pins.
Okay. But here, when this is an important part that is like still beyond me.
Okay.
I don't know how Ronnie Hawkins did this. The day that we decided to disband Ocean, that it was no longer viable, I was sitting in a hotel room. We had the conversation as a group, and the keyboard player, who was like a big brother to me and was the leader of the band, Greg Brown, we were sitting in a room and we're like, well, that's it, man. You know, what are you going to do? It's done. And my phone rings on my desk, and I pick it up, and it said, Jeff, it's Ronnie. I was just wondering if you wanted to play in my band, I could use a bass player and a keyboard player. Is that Greg guy? Is he around? He said, now, just like he said to Robbie Robertson and so many others, he said, now, I'd like you to play in my band. I can't pay you much, but you're going to get more pussy than Frank Sinatra.
I remember that Robbie Robertson in the documentary saying that very thing.
He said it to everybody that played in his band. Yeah.
That's terrific. Yeah, we just lost him a couple years ago too. The Hawks gone.
Yeah. So so we signed up. Yeah. So we did a year. I couldn't after a year. I mean, we had Jack DeKaiser. You've heard of the blues guitarist Jack DeKaiser?
Jack DeKaiser. When my son Riley and Declan and Tate became DRT, that was their first professional gig, opening for Jack DeKaiser at a hall in Edmonton.
Well, he was the guitar player, and King Biscuit Boy on harmonica.
Oh yeah.
A legendary. And so I include all of them in my new song and whatever. Ronnie used to call him Javelin Jack because he was so skinny, I could just pick him up and throw him like a javelin.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
and Ronnie was pretty staunch about everybody being on it when it came to playing. Once you had it down, then you go out and perform, and everything was good and a good time. But in getting prepared, he was really, really focused on everybody being prepared.
2 to 4 weeks just in the barn practicing eighth notes and make them steady all day. Make them steady. And maybe 1 or 2 beers at the end of a day of rehearsing. Yeah. Nobody's getting drunk at Ronnie's farm. And then, oh God, once we got out there, it wasn't like that anymore. And I could only take a year of that. I had to go. It was more than even young Jeff, he used to call me.
And from there, giving up on the party lifestyle. I mean, there's so much more. That's not far down the road. There was Red Ryder with you and Tom joining a band that already was in existence, right?
Well, and in between those two segments, we had a band called Stingery with a guitarist here in Toronto, a Hamilton native called Bernie Labarge. Highly underrated, underappreciated, great musician, great voice. And he got a band together and invited me and Brian Too Loud McLeod. And that was quite something. All of these guys were so great and could sing, could write. But after not that long of us having that band was when Brian was scooped up to join Chilliwack.
Then the Headpins became the side gig sort of thing, and you did some stuff. And then Darby, I was talking with Darby not long ago. as
Yeah.
well as she was
They
celebrating
didn't
her
want,
birthday.
he wanted to bring me into Chilliwack, and I dodged a bullet there because you know what came next. And that's not nothing again. I love Bill Henderson and Chilliwack music and Headpins music and Ab Bryant. This is all part of my soul too. But the management didn't want me in Chilliwack. They were looking for a bass player. That's how Ab got involved, because I didn't look like I was from the West Coast, if you know what I mean.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, and then Tom Cochran. You and Tom Cochran join Red Ryder, a band that's already formed, and end up swapping basically places with a couple of guys, and then the rest
Yeah.
is history. Starting with "Don't Fight It."
Yeah. The timing of that was just phenomenal, and we fell into it. It just like once we started playing together, and we worked on some of the songs that the guys were all that had already written, and then we were writing songs as we were going along, and we just fell into it. And Dean Cameron, God rest his soul, another great one, gone not that long ago, he brought us to Capitol and made it all happen. So we had a real great opportunity there. And I think we took pretty good advantage of it. I mean, we had producers that on those first records spent maybe more money than you needed to spend to make those records. So that was eating into what potentially we would have earned on the back end. But now in retrospect, maybe it needed that kind. The thinking of producers in that day was make the record company spend a lot of money on the production, and they'll be more likely to support it with promoting it.
Right.
So that was their thing. We didn't really want to have filet mignon being taxied out to our studio, but we were told, oh, they'll like this. So many things happened in those first 4 records that it was great. We got to see In Excess open for the Go-Go's in Atlanta.
Well, I can't really get my head around that.
Well, that's what I was thinking when I'm going, this is the opening act and the Go-Go's are the headliner. Nothing against the Go-Go's. I mean, more power to them, but I mean, In Excess, quite a catalog there.
Yeah,
We all got to start somewhere.
That's the case, and like Dave Grohl says, you got to start in your garage or your basement, and you have to start when you really suck, and you have to suck for a long time, and then all of a sudden somebody will pay attention to you. And it's even the same thing as Elton John says. Elton John says, don't skip the small venues because it's part of the learning process, and it's part of the important growth in music for artists, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Getting that opportunity to interact on that level, that's what makes it possible for you to step onto bigger stages and not be intimidated.
And you've been on them all too. I mean, you continue to play. You're still playing with Tom Cochran. You're playing with Burton Cummings when he's touring around. I know that we're guaranteed to see you come through town anywhere in Canada at least 2 or 3 or 4 times a year if you include festivals and that sort of thing.
Yep, it's going to happen.
When I talked to Tom on the podcast, he talked about the early days before Red Ryder and the fact that he was singer-songwriter out to Los Angeles, back to Toronto, out to Los Angeles, getting a song here on this television show or whatever the case. But in the meantime, he was working at a meatpacking plant. He was a cab driver. You were 16 when you started up in Ocean. Did you ever have a job like a civilian job?
No, let's see. Not until many years later, really, but I was still playing when I drove for a courier company here in Toronto in the 90s. I drove for a courier company and I was playing with Lawrence Gowan. And it was crazy because one time we played, there's a theater here in Markham called the Flato. and it's a very nice theater. And we played there. It was relatively new in that day, and a really successful, sold out show, maybe two, because it's not a giant venue. But anyway, we did this run, and on the weekend we played this concert in Markham, and then on Monday morning, I'm delivering a parcel to a business in Markham, and I come to the front door of the place, and then the guy goes, hey, everybody, when we were at that show on the weekend, the guy that was on bass is delivering the package. Come. And I'm like, no, don't tell them to come and say hello. Just sign for the package and let me get back in my car, right? Because it's like, oh, God. And that's what, Molly Johnson always used to say to me. Well, you really, when you're Canadian, you might be well known enough. If you ride on the subway, people might recognize you, and you don't have enough money to buy a car. Yeah. So that's the Canadian
show business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I happen to know somebody very, very well who's played Lollapalooza in India and also does some work on weekends porting at a bar.
Right.
I was kind of wrestling with whether or not I was going to ask you about this, but I do think it's an important part of your history, and it's an important part of the history of music in Canada. And I've read a bunch of stuff about it, and I've also disturbingly read comments about it. And it kind of made me mad because people are so visceral these days. Social media, being on a computer in a basement, saying whatever you want on keyboards and stuff that made me angry. But Rush has staunch fans that are just over the top Rush fans. Rush can do no wrong, and all the power in the world to Rush, right?
Absolutely.
But very early in your musical career, even before Ocean, at the age of 14, 15, you and Alex Lifeson hung out together with John Rutsey, right?
That's correct. That summer we played maybe twice, but we rehearsed every Saturday in Alex's basement, and his mom would make nice little sandwiches and stuff for us. We're teenage guys, and so I'll give you the Reader's Digest version, and I'm sure that Alex would corroborate this, because my issue with it is now, this many years later, people really love the chance to say Rush and to think about Rush and all things Rush, and I admire the heck out of them. I never, after 1969, or with the last time that I saw Alex, I didn't actually see him again until 82, 83, playing in Oklahoma City. We were playing with Pat Benatar, and Rush played the night before, and we went to see them, and it's the first time I'd seen Alex since we were kids.
So it was a good 14, 15 years since you guys had seen each other.
Right. Because while they started developing and building the Rush situation, Ocean had gone up and back. So we were in different orbits. So the early thing that happened was literally just this, one or two plays and 6 Saturdays of rehearsing, and we're playing Zeppelin, Hendrix, Cream. We're not writing anything. We're just trying to bang out Sunshine of Your Love. So that was it. So I never said anything about that. I never put that in any bio, because to me, as much as Rush is great, I don't feel like, oh God, I established Rush. Yes, Alex established Rush, and I was there, and John Rutsey was there, but they stayed on and did songwriting. I did that in other instances. So I think people make too big of a deal of it. In the years since, Alex and I kind of look at each other and go, really? that was fun and everything, but why are people making such a big deal of this?
Well, because it's Rush, and Rush fans can sometimes be that way. Kind of like Leaf fans.
I didn't think we could swear on this podcast, did I?
Maple Leafs, Maple Leafs, Maple Leaf. Oh, man. I've had such a terrific time chatting with you here today, Jonesy. It's always a treat when we get a chance to visit and have a handshake and a warm hug. And I look forward to seeing you out on the road again here real soon.
I appreciate it for sure.
Thank you so much for doing this today. If you're listening still, look up Velvet Sky by Jeff Jones. It's on Spotify. And heck, look up Ocean. Put your hand in the hand. Why not?
Yes, please do. And there will be more music forthcoming along the Velvet Sky trail.
Reluctantly.
Today's podcast brought to you by the Clayton Bellamy Foundation for the Arts, supporting education and community-based programs in the province of Alberta by providing financial support to arts programs in need. ClaytonBellamyFoundation.org.
Reluctantly.